Hello, and welcome back to Owens Bay. In today's episode, I was planning on making a very exclusive country club out at the edge of the city. So all these rich people down below here would have someplace to spend their leisure time, which I'm assuming they probably have quite a lot of. But sometimes in city builders, things don't go exactly to plan, and you end up building something completely different that you weren't expecting, which is the case here. This will probably be the last major urban development heading west out of the city along the coastline. I want to preserve some of the natural coastline here, as it's one of the defining characteristics of the region I'm building. Some of it has to stay in its natural state. Although I'm sure there's going to be a few vacation homes dotting the coastline eventually at some point. The area we're going to be working on today is coming into view right now. Right down here in this little valley. My name is Geis, and let's get started. Okay, for this episode, there's a few things I want to take care of. I wanted to just essentially finish off some of the areas I didn't get to finish down here in this little community, which is yet to be named. I do have a name for it, and we'll get into that a little later in the episode. I didn't really get into much of the backstory in the last episode, and I think I'll just talk a bit about it as I finish detailing out some of the schools here. Trying to come up with a history for the area is kind of like one of the more fun aspects of this particular build. Trying to wind together the stories of each individual community can be an interesting challenge. For this particular community, what I had in mind was the very first thing that, if we think about it historically, this probably would have been started off maybe as just a small village along the coastline, perhaps maybe with a small fishing industry. I haven't really thought about it too much. This area took a dramatic turn back in the 1920s when the private school was built up on the hillside here, which we'll get some glimpses of. Once that private school was built, more wealthy people in the community of New Sunderland started to buy property out here and started to migrate en masse. As New Sunderland grew as a city, the rich neighborhoods closer to town kind of got pushed out, and they all ended up out here. And the community has maintained that exclusive quality right up to the present time. didn't really put a lot of thought in laying out these buildings the first time, so now I have to go back and kind of like correct, some of the more glaring problems, although there are some issues. I'm sure this, weird angle here on this building is going to drive some people crazy. I could have extended the property, honestly, and made it fit better, but did a pretty good job of hiding it under a few trees, so it's not as noticeable. This path is actually pretty useful for the students going to the elementary school. It gives them a bit of a shortcut, and they use it quite a bit. I'm going to be placing down a park maintenance building here right along the highway behind the school. Of course, in game, this is going to provide park maintenance for the city, which is a good thing. How I'm going to treat it, though, is we're going to imagine it as the maintenance building for the school district. The region would be divided up into school districts. We're going to say that this school district is New Sunderland School District. It would have a number. We could, since New Sunderland was probably one of the original communities in the region, we could say school district number 1. Could be the first school district here. Anyway, this maintenance building would essentially provide maintenance for all the schools in the district and maintain all the school grounds. So for our purposes, that's what that building's about there. All I'm really doing here is integrating the school buildings into the surrounding landscape so everything looks like it belongs. Being right by the highway, they probably would have a fence to keep all the kids off the road. So obviously I'm using the college building here as our private school, and I want to integrate it into the surrounding landscapes a little better. I always find like all the included extra stuff around some of these buildings tends to be a bit much, especially the college. It's just way too many things. So I deleted all of it and I'm gonna put in my own stuff. I figured they would have some sort of sports field out back here. So not having a huge number of options here, I just went with the soccer field. And I'm going to use some of the custom net lanes here to draw in my own paths. essentially I deleted all the props, and I'm just going to draw things that make more sense for my particular region. So it's more fir trees, really. Using some of the static noises decals here to simulate some wear and tear on the soccer field. Of course, kids being kids are going to take shortcuts to get to places, so we're going to draw a little makeshift path up the hillside here. Now, I drew in an invisible path with the hope that people would use this path to get up to the private school. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. Nobody seems to use this path for anything, which is unfortunate. Using some of the flowering bushes from the California set here, just to give it a bit of color. Okay, that's it for the schools. Now I'm going to spend a bit of time detailing out the cemetery on the hill. This was a last minute addition. Once again, it wasn't something I actually was planning to put here, but my brain kind of went in this, what if I did this thing here direction? It's an interesting result. Now, how I'm going to handle the expansion of this, I'm going to be expanding the footprint of the cemetery so it's kind of cascading down the hillside. This is sort of successful, not really. It didn't quite get the effect I wanted. It does still work, and it's quite interesting. And the idea I'm trying to get here is this is a newer addition to the cemetery. You know, people keep dying and they need more space. So the original cemetery would be essentially a historic cemetery, and this add-on would be, you know, the expansion. as the city grew, they needed more room. And so it doesn't match the style of the original. It's not supposed to. It's essentially meant to look like a later edition. And obviously, by looking at it, not as fancy. I find the cemetery is also one of these assets where there's just way too many props. A lot of them are kind of nonsensical for a cemetery, so we're going to get rid of all those. I'm replacing the grass surface with another more muted grass surface, so it's not so it looks a little more natural, in my opinion. And we're going to use that surface for the entire cemetery, so at least the surfaces match. And I'm just using the line tool to draw in random gravestones. I'm also making a point to follow the contour lines of the actual hillside. And there's a kind of a view from the below. It's sort of meant to be seen from afar, so you can actually see the graves kind of coming down the hillside. It works, but I think I could have made it a bit better. This fence was just so I could see where the contour lines were. I'm going to replace it with a hedge here. And just in time, because I seem to be having a never-ending death wave. I don't know what's going on, but the deaths seem to just keep on coming and coming and coming without end. I know that has something to do with the patch, but it seems to be going on for a very, very long time here. Because this is a newer section of the cemetery, it's not going to be as fancy, only a few trees. Because of the depth wave, I have to spend some time beefing up depth surfaces throughout the entire region because I'm not keeping up with it. I'm also going to expand some parkland around the cemetery as well. I'm replacing the trees in the cemetery with just mature oak trees. This is a little gravel parking lot I'm drawing in here. This is for something we're going to be building a little later in the episode. Okay, at this point of the build, I really was thinking I was going to be building a country club out here. It's the perfect location right by the lake here. I was thinking golf course, horse ranch, and maybe like a retirement community of some sort. But then I got this idea in my head that right out by the highway here, we're probably going to have a bit of urban sprawl, and I thought maybe I could squeeze in a Morrissey's here. It's the right location for one in this region. This would be a fairly common development along highways, so it made a lot of sense. And you know, at this point I'm thinking, yeah, I got space. I could just throw this in here and it'll be fine, no problem. then I started thinking, you know, an office park out here would make a lot of sense as well. It's another thing that pops up like right along the highways here in this region. So yeah, let's throw in an office park. With that, also, you know, it's probably going to be right along the main stretch of road. There's probably going to be commercial buildings. That makes sense. And, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, these big box retail stores out along the highway, there's never just one. There's always more of them, or shopping malls or other things. I'm like, well, let's put one of those down as well. I don't really feel like plopping every single building here, so I'm going to zone in some things and just let it all grow in naturally. Of course, we need a gas station out here. That only makes sense. And usually around these big box developments, a lot of strip malls also pop up, which I'm also going to include. It's kind of around this point that I start realizing that I'm running out of space for my country club, and maybe it's not going to happen here. Which is okay. I have a couple other locations which might be suitable for a country club. Definitely have a couple other locations in mind for golf courses. So not the end of the world. It's just interesting how sometimes, you know, you start building something and it just goes off in a completely different direction that you weren't anticipating. Since I've kind of given up on the idea of the country club out here, it's like trying to think of what actually might be here. I really just settled on a small little community that's kind of grown up a little bit from the pressures of the city, so a little more development, but at this point in time, not a huge amount of development. It's just sort of starting to encroach on this little community. Like I said in the intro, this is going to be probably the last major urban development heading west in this area of the map. It's important for me to keep some of the natural landscapes intact for the region. I mean, it's the defining characteristic of this region, and to bury it all under urban sprawl wouldn't be an accurate depiction. The idea is they're kind of heading off into these like wilderness areas, which is not quite true to life. I mean, being honest here, there'd be a considerable amount of urban sprawl going out for quite a long distance before you would actually hit areas that you would consider wilderness. But because of the nature of the map here, we have to condense everything down a little bit, so we're going to pack it in a little tighter. We already have our wilderness mountain pass through Sasquatch National Park, and this is going to be our wilderness approach along the coastline. But like I said, there's probably going to be a smattering of the developments along the way. I'm thinking that there's a lake out here. There'll probably be another national or provincial park. There's probably going to be some vacation homes scattered about, but it's going to be left pretty much in its natural state. And this is our last highway connection out in this direction. It's nothing too complicated. I don't really expect this to be like a super busy interchange, so it's just a dumbbell roundabout setup here. It should be sufficient. This isn't going to be a particularly highly detailed area of the map. It is essentially backdrop for the main city, so it just has to look okay from a distance for the most part. And like any part of the map, if it's required in the future, I could always come back and add more details if need be. Since I wasn't building a country club, I started thinking about what other things might be along the highway. Right here, this is the extent of the service buildings. It's just a little fire station, elementary school, because I can't seem to get enough elementary schools. We're going for the older UK version here, just to give it a little bit of history to the area. And the chapel prop building from the cemetery to act as a church for the community. And we're going to give a little recolor to everything. Now I'm just going to zone most of the houses. I'm going to mix everything up, try to get a variety. There's a lot of, as you can see here, it's distorting the landscapes quite a bit. So there's a bit of terraforming, like what I'm doing right here, to kind of just blend everything together so it looks like it's okay. I'm not going to be building too high up on the mountainside. There is a reason for that, which we'll get to. I also want to keep this community very small. It's not very big. Out along the side of the highway, I thought this might be a good location for a recycling depot. I'm not going to spend too much time here showing the zoning of all the buildings. It's not that interesting. I also thought perhaps maybe one last housing development right at the very edge of the town. For this, we're going to be using some of the buildings from the UK set. These ones here. I really wanted to recolor them, but they don't recolor very well, unfortunately. So this would have been some big development project. They would have bought up all the land here and just plopped in a whole ton of medium density buildings. The community around here probably would have got some substantial kickback for this, so that's why it's here. You think I would have noticed that giant crane popping up there. For our recycling depot, I'm using the garage extension. This is just a prop version of it. What I'm going to be putting down here is a maintenance yard for the dump trucks. Right now I'm just figuring out how the terrain is going to work. Trying to figure out like exactly, urban sprawl along a highway. What do you usually see in those areas? And then a lot of times you just find these like, oh, there, see, that is definitely not what I want. This also was just, I wasn't expecting that, but I decided to leave that one. Just a bit of random height that I wasn't expecting. I also decided to add another police station out here. The cities always look awful at this stage. It's not until you start adding the trees and the detailing that everything kind of comes together as a unified thing. Now I'm going to start adding the details, which is essentially trees and parking lots for the urban sprawl, office park, and all that. Once again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time detailing any of this. It's essentially backdrop. Just enough so it looks good from altitude if we were flying by overhead, which is probably how we will see this region or this part of the map from this point forward. These big box retail outlets and malls would be required by the community to usually some sort of beautification efforts around them. So that's what that's all about there. I have a lot of fun trying to figure out where people might create makeshift paths for the environment to create shortcuts. It happens everywhere. People are lazy. They want to take the shortest path, so they're going to figure out ways of getting there. So it's a fun little detailing thing I like to do. And I'm finding trees are very useful to cover up some of the more really glaring distortions in the landscape. Since I'm going for a late summer vibe for the region, it's going to be very, very dry. We could imagine there's been a very long, hot, dry summer, which is not unusual for this area. July, August can be very, very dry up here. So the grassy areas very likely would have dried out by this point. And a little office building right by the highway. I said it in the last episode, but the trees, one of the most useful things I think trees do is they are a visual shorthand for an age of a neighborhood. The bigger the trees, the older the neighborhood. It's pretty straightforward. If you're doing like a new housing development, obviously any trees in there would be very new and so very small. But for more established areas, the trees would be much, much larger. So I think this is something people don't necessarily think a lot about, but it applies to the entire city. So these areas next to the highway here are fairly recent developments. trees, what you would, and bushes and all this sort of stuff, what you would do is you would try to make selections that reflect that. So I'm not going for anything too large or well established. Also, some tree species grow super quick. So everything here in this, along the highway here, we're talking maybe 20 to 30 years old. So the trees actually wouldn't be that big yet, unless there's some fast growing species. So smaller trees, smaller bushes, and more open space. The reason why I'm putting a recycling depot out here is we're quite a long ways away from the incinerator and the main recycling center in Queensport. So I figure they might need a bit more garbage pickup out here. Hopefully this doesn't generate a lot of noise or pollution. I don't think it does, but we'll see. Here I'm going to be doing a bit of experimentation with some surfaces. I'm using the 50% black here to create a black, kind of like a dark surface. And then we're going to use the stains to kind of blend it out. One interesting thing I've noticed with this is you kind of get this like dark earth effect. So there's a better example of it earlier with a little playground. I think it looked a little better. This is one of those experiments where it kind of like didn't quite work out, but I just left it. It looked okay. It looked good enough. But yeah, you can see here we have this kind of like, it looks like earth, which is interesting. Yeah, at this point I kind of lost the plot here. So I cover it all up with some bushes. I do come back later with some grass decals to blend it a bit better, so it doesn't look so stark at that point. And the death wave continues. So yeah, these big box retails, stores and malls and stuff would be required by the community to probably maintain some sort of parkland. I'm putting that in quotation marks because obviously nobody uses it as a park. It's just there. It's those trees might be a bit large for that. Here I'm going to be playing around with the 50% black, 25% black to create different paved surfaces. This definitely is an experiment, and I wouldn't say it's exactly successful, but I have to do these sorts of things to kind of figure out how it works. This is kind of, I'm thinking here for this sort of thing, like, you know, like patches of pavements of different colors and stuff. This would actually work quite well for that. What I'm doing here, yeah, it's not really all that successful. Once again, it's just a little too much or the wrong things mixed together. it's okay. I leave it. If it looks good enough, sometimes it's okay to just leave it. For here, yeah, this is the maintenance yard for the actual dump trucks in the area. And so it's like a mechanic's garage in there, small gas station for like a refueling point and just a little office for the drivers to check in, I suppose. The town is basically laid out in a way so it looks interesting from the highway. So if I was doing a drive through the region, this is essentially the purpose of this place, is to look interesting from the highway. I accidentally put down some prop people here by mistake, and now I don't know how to delete them. I think they're going to be out there forever. I'm using one service to unify the entire development as one thing. Now I'm missing a little bit of footage here, so it's nothing too important. It's just putting all the trees down for the town. So like you've already seen several examples of me doing it in this episode. Not necessarily needed to be seen over and over again. And I'm going to spend a bit of time integrating some of the lawns and stuff so they fit their lots a little better. That's essentially the little town. Which needs a name. I have no name for that, so if anybody has any ideas, let me know. I will consider them. So I wanted to include a natural feature here for this community, and I thought a waterfall would be kind of a neat addition. Now this is just decorative, it doesn't function, there's no flowing water here. I'm just using Sully's wave decals here on their side to kind of indicate flowing water. I've done this before on the map. It's quite effective. From a distance, it looks really good. And this is essentially where the name for this town comes from. The name of the falls is Silver Falls, And that will be the name of this community here. It's also the name of the private school. It's the Silver Falls Academy. Okay, we're going to pan out here for just a sec. Take a larger look at the whole area. Now, a little shout out here to Few Candy. She's the one who actually discovered this particular view on her map, which I had no idea was even here. We're going to ignore the massive amounts of depth occurring below here for just a moment and just focus in on the view. Now, to be honest, I think this might be one of the best views on this map. I mean, just look at it. It's just incredible. What am I going to do with this on my map? Well, in this particular region, we're going to go back to our regular screen here. So for this particular region, I think what would happen is the most likely outcome would be the community of Silver Falls, being very, very wealthy, probably would have turned this entire mountain into a regional park. Now, a regional park for this particular area, essentially it'd be left mostly in its natural state and maintained that way, with just a series of hiking trails so people can hike up to the top of the mountain and enjoy the views. And that's what we're going to be building here. It's not going to be anything too fancy. At the parking lot, there's going to be a couple of outhouses, and that's it. It's just a trailhead. I should have probably down some signage to sign for the map of the trail system here. I didn't include any, but that would also be something that you would find here. And this is a pretty rugged trail, so I'm not doing any landscaping here to accommodate it. You're going to have to be in good shape to hike up this mountain. And I don't need the path to be you're going to see the net lanes don't conform to this steep terrain very well, so there's some parts where they're missing. That's okay. You're not going to be able to see all the trail from above. A lot of it's going to be covered by trees, so not an issue. I did think though it wasn't, if you're looking at it from a bit of a distance, you couldn't really see it. So I did outline them with the forestry surface here just to make them a little more visible from a distance. Now on the other side of the mountain, in the other community, there would also be most likely a trailhead here as well, so people can access this particular regional park from both ends. Once again, it's pretty simple. It's just a gravel parking lot and a couple of outhouses and the access point to the trails. probably would be some fencing here just to keep people from going over the edge. But it's pretty minimal. Like it's just the trails. They would be seasonal. They'd probably be inaccessible in the wintertime due to just weather conditions or snow. Like I said, it'd be pretty rugged. Although I'm putting a lower trail down here along the lower slopes of the mountain for people who just want a more leisurely walk. And now I'm going to put back all the trees. On the south side of the mountain here, I'm going to leave it a little more open, a little more grassland, but on the north side, it's going to be a dense forest. And that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. If you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. I will see everybody in the next episode. Bye.